We have special guests with us, Congresswoman and former presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard's with us. Hi, Tulsi. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy. I'm doing well today. How are you?
Oh, okay. So are you getting called up for duty now?
Not yet, but I'm ready. I just spoke with a friend of mine who's actively in the National Guard. It's her full-time job, and everybody is kind of standing by and putting the plans in place should the need arise, especially here, given we are the most remote island chain in the world. And so our response not only has to do with the island that I live on, the island of Oahu, but we have residents on each of the other islands, soldiers and airmen on each of those other islands. And so the steps towards preparedness for an activation, if it's needed, are definitely underway.
Okay. Well, good luck.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Everything's going great. And we're getting along. No problem. Nope. No problems. No problem.
That's good. That's good.
I'm not. What? It's not me.
Sensing a little sarcasm there.
Anyway, listen, I wanted to ask you. So, you were very public about taking this all the way to the convention. So, tell us about your thought process when you dropped out.
Yeah, look, there's some unprecedented things happening right now. And as always, I'm constantly both within that campaign, outside of the campaign. I'm always trying to see how and where I can make the most impact, where I can best be of service, how I can best continue to fight for the things that I've been fighting for so long. And given this coronavirus pandemic, given the state of the race and kind of where things were at, especially after Tuesday's elections, seeing some of the states delaying their elections, just looking at the landscape and taking a very practical view on how and where my focus could best serve the people of Hawaii and our country. That's what drove me to make the decision, make the announcement that I did.
So can you tell us what was the mission of your presidential campaign? What was the message you wanted to convey to the American public?
That our nation's long-held foreign policy of regime change wars, being the world's police, going and toppling dictators in other countries must end. This new Cold War that we are in, this escalation of tensions between the U.S. and other nuclear-armed countries, a nuclear arms race that's casting a shadow of this threat of nuclear catastrophe over us and the world has got to end. And really talking about the cost and the consequences, both in lives as well as in American taxpayer dollars, and the need for us to bring about this sea change in our foreign policy and really focus on how we can redirect our taxpayer dollars on where they're needed most. That mission through my campaign to try to bring about this change is a mission that I am committed to and will be continuing.
So everyone's, well, first of all, I'll just say I agree. Thanks for making that the centerpiece of your campaign. Thanks for that message. I think it certainly pulled the Democratic Party to the left. It certainly, well, I don't know if maybe not the party, but certainly the campaign, the way people campaigned. And it's certainly now people at least know what regime change war is because you were nice enough to go on CBS News and tell the hosts what it actually is.
I forgot about that.
so that was kind of shocking to see a CBS News host go, can you tell me what is a regime change war?
Yeah, so, but I think it does bring into focus how not only in this campaign but in previous elections, as people are running to serve as commander-in-chief of our armed forces, where the president's foremost responsibility is the safety and security and freedom of the American people, how little focus there has been and continues to be on what that actually means in a practical way and what the implications are of what our cross-partisan, long-standing foreign policy has been and who is paying the price.
So now there's a lot of talk about your decision to support Joe Biden. Now, some people are saying you didn't endorse him, you just support him. Could you tell us, is there a distinction between that, and what do you say?
Again, look, I made this decision and made the announcement with a very clear view on where we are and what Democratic primary voters have decided about who the Democratic nominee will be to take on Trump in November. There are a lot of problems with this whole process. You and I have talked about this a number of times, but I'm a realist and very pragmatic about where we are and where we must go forward and how I can continue to best push these issues that I have focused on to the forefront, push this foreign policy, this 21st century foreign policy change to the forefront. And I'm supporting Joe Biden to do that over Donald Trump. This is the choice that's before voters as we head towards the elections in November.
So is there a distinction between support and endorse or no?
Not really.
Okay. So now people are big controversy because you're such a strong anti-war voice. And then you endorse or support Joe Biden, and he voted for George W. Bush's Iraq War. He supported regime change in Libya. He still supports regime change in Syria. Joe Biden today is against troop withdrawal in Iraq and Syria. I mean, so how can you square that circle? How could, if your message was one thing, endorse a guy who's diametrically opposed? How does that happen?
Like I said in my message, I don't agree with Joe Biden on every issue. I'm looking forward, continuing to see how I can best influence our nation's policies to do exactly what I've set out to do. Given the choices that are before us, I have thrown my support behind Joe Biden versus Trump. Which is something I've always said I would do, by the way, that I would support the eventual Democratic nominee, given the situation that exists, and continue to use my platform and whatever I am able to use to actually work to bring about this change. So,
but yeah, so you always, okay, but there's no evidence that we're going to be able to influence Joe Biden, right?
The task before us is great. We've always known this, that when we look at the foreign policy establishment in Washington, the obstacles are serious, but I'm not willing to throw in the towel and walk away and give up the fight. I'm continuing this mission, and I hope that everyone who has come and joined our campaign and who has stood with me in belief in this message and this leadership will continue to stand with me in working to do this.
So other people have asked, why didn't you criticize Joe Biden more in the campaign? And especially since he would be the guy most emblematic of these wars, because he, got us into them and he's always for them and voted for the Iraq War. So people were wondering why you didn't criticize him more during the campaign.
I think if you look throughout my campaign, I really wasn't focused on criticizing one or another candidate as in multiple interviews, and people ask similar questions. Well, what about this person? What about that person? My focus has always been on my candidacy, what I'm offering to the American people, the kind of leadership and experience that I bring, and pointing out problems with the political infrastructure, the political powerful elite in Washington, and the systemic change that we need to bring about.
Yeah, but I agree with all your goals and all this stuff, and it just seems like, aren't you worried that it completely dilutes your message to, like, what I know you signed that pledge, and so you have, but you always buck the system, you always go against, and so it just seems like it could have been a bigger statement had you said, I'm not endorsing Joe Biden because this is crazy. This guy's a warmongering maniac. Plus, he's obviously in mental decline. This is the corporate party just killing itself, right? The Democratic Party is revealing that it's unable to even put... He's a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton. He has no chance to beat Donald Trump. And so, I don't know, wasn't this a time to maybe make even a bigger stand? What do you say?
I am very clear-eyed about the political landscape that's before us. And as I have always and will always do, I'll make my decisions about how I feel I can best make that positive impact, how I can best work to bring about the kind of change that I've committed my life to doing. And that hasn't changed, and it'll never change.
So did you reach out to the Bernie campaign to offer an endorsement or conversation?
Yeah, I've reached out, but my conversations with them, I'll keep between us and them.
Oh, okay. So you didn't offer your endorsement to the Sanders campaign?
Yeah, like I said, I reached out, and I'll keep my conversations between us and them.
And so have you discussed a position with Joe Biden in his campaign?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. All right. So it's just people aren't people like me, wanted you to form a third party. And of course, you smacked me down on the show. You let me know
every time
I brought it up. You let me know that's not happening. You're a committed Democrat. And, and the reason why is because right now we're in this position where somebody who's anti-war is going to have to endorse and work for a guy who's diametrically opposed and is a warmonger. And then Bernie Sanders, the guy whose signature issue is Medicare for All, is going to have to endorse a guy who just promised to veto Medicare for All, even if it passes the House and Senate. So you have two big progressives having to endorse the person who's publicly guaranteeing not to do what we want them to do. So do you understand? I mean, I'm sure you understand.
I totally understand your frustration. I completely understand it. Again, I look at things at a very practical level, and I see how the existing political infrastructure makes it virtually impossible for any third party candidate to be viable. So let's look at, if for those who are advocating for a viable third party, start working towards changing that infrastructure that would make that a real thing.
Okay, so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about so it's anti-war veterans. So we have a lot of veterans and anti-war veterans watch this show, and I meet them when we do events and everything, and they wanted me to ask you this: that they say a lot of anti-war veterans say they are not proud to have served, that they are sorry to have taken part, and they offer apology to the countries that they occupied and the people that are living there, and that participating in these wars is only a service to weapons manufacturers and war profiteers. So what do you say to that?
I respect every veteran, those who make those statements and those who express their pride in serving our country. I am personally, I'm proud to wear this country's uniform. I'm grateful for the privilege of being able to serve. And it is those experiences that I have had throughout my service that have motivated me to dedicate all of my energy towards bringing about the political change in our leadership that actually honors the great sacrifice, selflessness, and courage that our men and women in uniform and that our veterans lay on the line. I think that it's important to draw that line of distinction between those who serve and wear the uniform and who salute the flag versus the politicians who are dishonoring that service through the policies that they are advocating for.
So, I mean, it seems to me that soldiers are not fighting for the safety and security of this country, and when they go over to places like Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, they're actually achieving the opposite. Even in fighting the war on terror, where it's observed that for every civilian killed, we create 2 more jihadis. And so, I mean, it just seems, giving your piercing criticism of these corporate interventions, doesn't it seem, can you square that circle for me, how you can be proud to serve in things that you call out for being wrong?
I'm proud to serve our country. I am angered by the politicians who needlessly send our troops into harm's way to fight in wars that don't make us any safer. There are missions that our troops are sent on to go and defeat ISIS and Al-Qaeda that are focused on making the American people safe. And those are missions that should continue to defeat that threat that is posed to our national security and foreign policy. But you're right, there are a lot of missions in whether it's continued deployments to Afghanistan without any clear objective or any clear goal that actually serves our country's security interests, or regime change wars like we've seen in Iraq and Syria and Libya and other countries that actually undermine our national security interests. So there is a difference and a distinction, especially when you know and you understand that it's the politicians who are making these decisions, and it's why I'm focusing my efforts on bringing about that change there to truly honor them and their service.
So now we're in the middle of this COVID pandemic, and you don't eat animal products. You're a vegan, and COVID-19 originated in non-human animals and was then passed on to animals. Wuhan not only has exotic animal farms, but also a biological laboratory using animals. Animals have been known to be sold outside of their lab after experiments were even done. So, and worldwide, meat and dairy is promoted and subsidized. Factory farms are kept in filthy, crowded conditions that allow bacteria to flourish, and they are treated with antibiotics, which create superbugs. I mean, if we're to avoid diseases such as COVID, SARS, MERS, swine flu, avian flu, mad cow disease, the list goes on, don't we have to get off animal products? And worldwide, don't we have to stop messing with animals, destroying their natural lives for profit?
Yeah, I think that this whole pandemic is going to spur a lot of change that will both directly impact the choices that we make as individuals here in the United States and around the world. It will, I think, impact the way we live our lives, our environment. It'll impact, I mean, even things like education and how we work, with a lot of new doors being open now with telework and online education, all these other things. But specific to your point, I think it is critical to highlight the negative impacts of these factory farms and these, kind of the mass meat and dairy industry that has really a negative impact, even outside of this pandemic, has a negative impact on people's health when they over-inject these animals with massive amounts of antibiotics and other things. That has a direct impact on the people who are consuming that meat. It has an impact. I remember driving through Iowa throughout this campaign and going through communities that had these factory farms, and just the stench in the air was inescapable. And I was like, gosh, what about the people who live in these communities? How can you live in this environment? And then talking with some of them and hearing about how all of the waterways in Iowa are completely contaminated, and they've got to have signs posted up saying, don't let your dog play in these streams because they could fall seriously sick because of that contamination. I think this is it's a complete. I think this is an unprecedented situation, but I think you could also draw a parallel with the fires in the Amazon, and how those fires drew a lot of global attention, both on the destruction that was occurring, but also then begged the question, well, why is this happening? And the number one driver was Brazil is the number one exporter of beef in the world, and they need to, as they're trying to support their beef industry, they're continuously clearing more and more trees, whether through fires or through other methods, to be able to produce more beef to meet the world's demand. So if you care about that, and if you care about protecting the environment, then you should ask, I think it causes us all to ask ourselves, okay, well, what changes do I need to make to actually be the change?
So I just have one more question. So a couple months ago, there's these kids who live across the street from me. I don't know how, they're like 16 through 19, and they're out washing their car. And then 3 recruiters jumped out of their car and started recruiting them to go fight in these bogus wars. And so Steph and I went out and we started talking to the kids, and we said, you don't have to listen to these guys. Tell these guys to get lost. And so it made me think, everything that you touch, you make it a little bit more attractive. So are you worried that people are joining these bogus wars because you made joining a little more attractive?
No, I'm not. There's great honor in serving our country. And whether you're a kid who's graduating from high school or you're someone of any age and you make that decision to go and serve our country, no matter the political circumstances, that is a very rare and special thing. I also respect those who say, no, I won't join the military because I don't want to be in that position to have to go and fight in a war that a politician sends me to go and fight. And I respect people's decisions on both ends of the spectrum, but there is no honor lost in those who make that decision, raising their right hand to say, I'm willing to lay my life down for my country and the safety and well-being of the American people. And that's a decision that's motivated by love.
So right now, it's being revealed the Democratic Party is completely calcified. It can't move left enough to have a solution to meet this problem. Their solutions are half measures, if that. Nancy Pelosi right now is actually blocking a direct UBI payment to citizens, and she wants to do. And Chuck Schumer is offering tax credits and low interest loans. So, first of all, what do you say about the inability for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to meet the moment? And what does that say about this party?
Well, this is where we've got to turn up the heat, and there's been a lot of activity online. I encourage people to continue to do that, to continue to put pressure. It's kind of ironic that you have Republicans in the Senate who are supporting that direct basic payment to every American, but you're seeing opposition from some Democrats. I think it's not a question of either or. Yes, we should be pushing for an end, a suspension of foreclosures, delay on no fees or penalties if you're late to pay your mortgage or your rent, student loans. I think there's many layers to this. But look, this comes down to cutting through the bureaucracy and just saying, hey, we've got to help people right now. Every single day I'm talking to people, Jimmy, every single day, small business owners, freelance workers, people who work for big corporations who are being told you've got to go on leave without pay or who are getting laid off. The circumstances are dire and they are urgent. And now is not the time to play politics. Now is not the time to come in and try to take advantage of this situation with some ulterior motive, even if it may be good, because people just need help right now. And I and others we've got to continue to turn up the heat on the leaders in Washington, both Democrat and Republican. Even the Republican proposal that the Senate has pushed forward, I believe it's a one-time payment of $1,200, and they're cutting out. I think it drops down to $300 or $600 for the poorest of Americans, for the poorest of people. And you've got, I think, Mitt Romney saying like, hey, that's not right. It's just like, I don't know what's going on here, but here's what I know. One single payment of $1,200 is not going to do shit for a lot of people in this country at this time where they're looking at potentially months of uncertainty, of being without a job, of not. A friend of mine, she's an amazing singer on Maui. She texted me last night and she's like, I don't know what to do. All the gigs are canceled. I don't know how I'm going to be able to earn a paycheck to be able to, pay the rent. I mean, there's the scope of the effects of this, I think, are difficult to comprehend at this time. And it is not the time for half measures, especially when Congress moves too slow as it is. Don't say you're just going to say $1,200 per person right now and we'll see what happens later. Get it right now. My proposal is this needs to be a monthly payment.
Yes.
Every single adult American in the country for the duration of this crisis.
Yes.
How long will it last? We don't know. At whatever point we get to a place where not only the health threat and risk has been eliminated, but the economic threat and risk has been eliminated, then we can talk about getting back to some sense of new normalcy.
So it's stunning to see that a lot of people are saying that there's a political realignment happening because Trump is moving further left along with the Republican, his cabinet and the Senate. They're moving further left easily than Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are so calcified in their connection to their donors that they can't make a move to actually help people in a crisis. This party is worthless. And so it's funny to see Donald Trump be able to fully embrace socialism, whereas Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are still afraid, still, as someone put it, tripping down the same steps they were in 2016. It's nuts. So now is the time I don't know what is going to happen to the Democratic Party, but if there was ever a time for a third party, it is right now. And if you ever decide to lead it, which I know you're not going to, I know this is a pipe dream, but if you would, it would be fantastic. And you know what I just think is interesting is all the people who maligned you as a Russian agent and a Kremlin puppet and all the Assad, Tony, all the stuff. As soon as you said you were going to support Joe Biden, all that went away. Isn't that amazing? So no longer does that apply. Neera Tanden tweeted out nice things about you. It's just amazing. So what that tells me is that all that stuff they said about you was just smears to try to isolate you and kind of silence you.
That's exactly right. And I have, my message has been consistent throughout, both in why I ran for president, the change that I was seeking to bring about, but also in my commitment that I would not run as a third party candidate and that I would support the eventual Democratic nominee. And this is what I have been frustrated by. One of the things I've been frustrated by throughout this whole process, but even now, is that I just hope people listen to what I'm saying and the commitments that I've made in putting country first, putting service to the people first, and doing whatever I can to be able to best be of service to them. So I don't play the political games that everybody else plays. I am constantly assessing and reassessing and seeing, hey, how can I best be of service?
Well, I appreciate your service. I appreciate you raising everyone's consciousness about these wars, what they're about. People know what it is now. Fourth whistleblower, OPCW whistleblower, just came out proving you were correct about Syria, proving that that's a bogus intervention. And so, of course, a lot of people are bending over backwards to apologize to you now. Of course not. Of course not.
Well, no one's really even talking about it still. That's the problem.
They don't even report on it.
Yeah.
They don't even report that that's happening. So, of course, and which just makes the corporate media complicit, which you singularly were alone in calling them out right to their face during. I mean, it was so thrilling. Like, you just give thrills to people, right? And that's why it's so crushing to see you have to endorse a warmonger like Joe Biden. It's so crushing that we're stuck in this two-party system, and that's people like you have to do that. And Bernie's going to have to support a guy who just vowed to veto Medicare for all, and the head of a party that is unable to meet the moment right now. So anyway, thank you very much. Anything else that I forgot to ask you that you want to talk about?
I want to mention just a couple things about the whole coronavirus situation. There's a friend of mine who is a nurse in the state of Michigan. She sent me something that was, she posted something that was pretty disturbing, just pointing to kind of the need for leadership and action now. They got a notice from their leadership in the hospital where she works that everyone who is not on a surgical team, meaning nurses, doctors, assistants, whoever, they will be issued one mask per week to use. One mask per week, and there are very specific instructions about how they have to store that mask in a paper bag, and they have to label it and put what date that they were issued the mask, because they will not get issued another mask before that week is over. These are these basic paper single-use masks that we've seen people use in hospitals all the time. One mask per week. So they're working 12-hour shifts every single day. It's just it's hard to fathom how this is happening in the United States of America and not in a third world country where basic protective equipment, same issue with the tests that they're still not testing the numbers of people that need to be tested so we can have a realistic view on how good or bad things are in this country. It is astounding to see the lack of foresight and proactive leadership coming to actually put the health and well-being of people first. So this is where, look, both within Congress, and I'm looking outside of Congress, I'm trying to be really creative here to say, okay, how do we get the kinds of basic necessities that our healthcare professionals need and that people here in this country really, really need, especially during this time. And so stay tuned. I'm gathering all the information. I'm trying to see what we can do, what we the people can do if our government continues to fail us.
Okay, Tulsi Gabbard, thank you for taking time to talk with us and explain your thought process. And it was really, it has been a real pleasure getting to know you. over the campaign, and it was my
There's
pleasure.
more to come.
And it was
There
my
is
pleasure
more
to
to
help
come.
get your anti-war message out. And
Thank you.
I just hate that we're handcuffed in America and we only have two parties. So anyway, thank you so much, and
She comes back.
I hope you come back. And what's
Of
on
course.
the horizon for you? You're not running for Congress again, correct?
I'm not running for re-election. I'm really focused right now on my work in Congress. Like I said, fulfilling my duties in the National Guard, and really starting to think through how best we can continue this mission beyond. So stay tuned. We'll be in touch.
Okay. All right. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you very much.
Much love to you and Steph. Thank you both.
Bye-bye. Aloha.
Thank you.
Aloha.
I like saying aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?